Yesterday, I put out a video looking at the defensive line for the Kansas City Chiefs and the sort of suggestion from a lot of the mainstream media that the Chiefs would still be looking to add at the defensive line positions, both the edge and the defensive interior positions on this team. And I think it is more likely that they go out and try to find a defensive tackle, but I think that there is a possibility that they go out there and try to add more pass rush at the defensive end position, or at least just a little bit more competition. After all, the Chiefs did not add a single UDFA player at the edge position, and I think that that is perhaps kind of telling. The UDFAs are always a long shot to make the roster, but the Chiefs always have a couple UDFAs that do make the team, and even more that do make the practice squad for the team. And they did not bring back Truman Jones, who had been the pet project at defensive end on the practice squad for a couple of seasons now. So I think it is possible that they do go out and add talent at the edge position. And I wanted to spend a little bit of time looking at some of the options there. And then, so there are obviously players who are free agents right now. But the NFL currently allows all teams to have 90 men on the roster, and eventually that's going to become 53. So there are going to be hundreds of free agents that then flood the market. And I think that there is a possibility that the Chiefs are waiting for that moment to add more talent there as opposed to the guys who are already on the streets. And there are a couple of bigger names from that list of people from edge players that they think might get cut, different whispers around the NFL. And then there's a couple of interesting smaller names that are possible roster bubble guys right now that I think could end up getting cut, and if they do, would be right within the wheelhouse of what it is that the Kansas City Chiefs like to do at the edge position. Now, the number one name out there is obviously Jadeveon Clowney, the edge who has been on the Andre Rison career path, playing on half the teams in the NFL by this point. He was recently cut, and you see there a minimum of $4 million. He is going to be paid around $6 million of the $10 million that he was owed to play this season, meaning if he wanted to come out just at even, he would be able to sign a contract at the $4 million mark. I think that is highly unlikely. I think eventually there will be a market for Jadeveon Clowney as teams get into camp and realize, we're not where we thought we were at the edge position, which will push up the number for which he signs, and I think he's likely to sign for more than $6 million per season. But $4 million is kind of what I think it would take to get him in the door immediately, right now, unless he is content with sitting out and waiting for a spot, and we've seen Clowney do that before. Last season, he had 650 reps. Now, remember, he is 32 years old, but he's 6'5", 255 still. I think he was listed last season at 266, which was a jump up for him. I think he has traditionally played at that 255 mark, but was listed last year at 266. So he's still a very, very physical player. And he had 44 pressures reported by PFF in the 2024 season, which would be a pretty good deal for the Kansas City Chiefs. Had a 70.8 overall grade with a 73.2 pass rush grade and a 63.4 run defense grade, 28 tackles, 6 sacks, 14 assists, etc. Now, these numbers here, the pre-draft measurables, aren't going to matter very much because he is 32 years old now. But you see there, he was 266 coming out of college, cut down for most of his career in the NFL, over 6'5", 34.5-inch arms, 10-inch hands, ran a 4.53 40-yard dash, and delivered one of the nastiest hits you will ever see at the college football level. Had a 37.5-inch vertical, 10'4" broad jump, 31 reps on the bench press. So he was coming out a stalwart. He was coming out a physical presence. So should the Kansas City Chiefs, they have $12.6 million right now of cap space, which is not a lot, but there's a lot of, one of the potential cuts we're going to get into in a moment is from a team, the Bills, who have like $1.9 million, unless I am looking at something wrong. So the takeaway, the natural takeaway, looking at the fact that the Chiefs, a Super Bowl contender, are going into training camp currently with over $12 million of cap space, suggests that possibly they are leaving room open to do a deal. And Jadeveon Clowney on a 1-year sort of make-up deal for the fact that he was cut, that would be a massive move. Then we have a guy that I think is a little bit underrated in DeMarcus Walker. He was rated something like the 5th best edge player available by PFF, but in that range they had a lot of players under the $1 million expected contract area, so it's possible you could get DeMarcus Walker in for just $1 million. 6'4", 280 pounds, another 30-year-old player. But he played 738 snaps last season and added 39 pressures according to PFF. He has an overall grade of 64.7, a pass rush grade of 61.3, and a run defense grade of 62.3. Coming out of college, again, these numbers aren't all that exciting because they are very old, but just under 6'4", 280 pounds, 33-inch arms, a 4.88 40-yard dash, 31.5-inch vertical, 9 foot 7-inch broad jump. Those are kind of defensive tackle numbers there, 20 reps on the bench press. So you're not getting an absolute physical freak, but you're getting a guy who played 738 snaps last season and graded out fairly well. This is someone who would come in and contribute to the Chiefs immediately. I hesitate to say that he would be on the Charles Omenihu level of what you could expect from him at the edge position, but I think you would be getting more from him than the Chiefs did from FAU last season. So this is a guy who would be keeping probably FAU off the field, would not be keeping Ashton Gillotte off the field to what I believe Ashton Gillotte is capable of, and is someone who would drastically bring up the floor of the edge position for the Kansas City Chiefs. When you get down into the lower ranks on the Chiefs depth chart at edge, you have guys that are maybe not NFL players, maybe not guys that you want to count on for numerous reps per game. And DeMarcus Walker, I think still at 30 years old, is a guy that you could count on for several reps per game. He's a guy that you could wheel out there for your defensive line, and actually at 6'4", 280 could rotate across your defensive line as opposed to just at the edge position. So is a guy who would add defensive end, defensive interior versatility for the Chiefs and allow a lot of that rotation that we really need to see if we're hoping to keep an older Chris Jones fresh for the postseason and get someone like George Karlaftis off the field for a few more reps per game. We have seen George Karlaftis really has sort of a golden range there of reps. When you cut down his reps, he becomes a more effective player. And I think that might be something that you're looking at here if you wanted to add DeMarcus Walker to the Kansas City Chiefs. And then a guy who was ranked a lot higher than DeMarcus Walker by PFF was Brandon Graham, who is 37 years old, played 311 snaps last year at 6'2", 265 pounds, added 20 pressures on those snaps, has a 78.6 overall grade from PFF, a 71.8 pass rush grade, and an 80.1 run defense grade. Would probably cost, PFF estimates, $2 million per season. So you're doubling the contract that you would be giving DeMarcus Walker potentially. And he is someone who is very, very not young. So looking at these combine pro day numbers is almost laughable, but came into the league at 268 pounds, 32 and a quarter inch arms, 4'7", 240-yard dash. You're looking at 31 reps on the bench press. This is a guy who, in my opinion, is still executing around or better. I think he's better than Mike Dana against the run, obviously. I think that he adds the same amount of juice. Can hope if he did not fall off after his age 37 year in the NFL. And this is a guy who would be playing fewer reps, but you could count on him for some juice off of the edge. You could count on him to set the edge for your defense. You're looking at a guy who is the consummate professional, and he's been doing it for a long time. So, I mean, think about it. If he's 37, I mean, Patrick Mahomes would have been in grade school when he was drafted, I believe. This is a guy who would as well bring leadership to the edge position. You've got a consummate professional who can step in and help the Ashton Gelatis of the world, probably even the George Karlaftises of the world, even though George Karlaftis has been in the NFL a few years. Just having another guy there who has been doing it for so long might pay dividends on that level as well. And then we're going to get into some possible cuts listed from sources around the media. So I kind of fished through articles about roster bubble guys, and one is a more well-known name that is probably not surprising. One is a name that is probably surprising, but is still getting whispered about being a possible cap casualty and a possible post cut down day casualty. Now, the first one is Yetur Gross Matos, a guy who was drafted fairly high and hasn't really done a whole lot in his time in the NFL. Has been kind of up and down there. 6'5", 266 pounds, 34 7/8" arms. With a 34-inch vertical and a 10-foot broad jump, adding 20 reps on the bench press, 20 reps with nearly 35-inch arms. Probably the 49ers aren't all that impressed with what he has done in San Francisco so far. There are whispers that he could be cut just to save cap space, just to make room for other players. And if that is the case, I do think that Yetur Gross Matos would offer some versatility to the Chiefs as far as inside-outside optionality. He's not been the most productive player, but he was fairly highly drafted, would probably want quite a bit of money. I haven't looked at his contract to see exactly what it is that he is being paid or would be paid if he were cut, but the 49ers would save money by moving on from him. So it's a possibility that he hits the market. And 6'5", 266, kind of a Steve Spagnuolo guy. You're looking at those 34, basically 35-inch arms, and that is a lot of reach. The Chiefs' defensive line has been fairly good at knocking down passes. George Karlaftis particularly, but Chris Jones is very tall. And if you're looking to add disruption against opposing quarterbacks, just the chaos factor of more of these guys with their hands in the air could be a deciding factor as to whether or not one or two of those passes per game gets completed. So that is one name there. This is what he has done in the NFL. Added 4.5 sacks last season, which was his best so far. A guy who, did he not play last season? Something is wonky there. Was he injured last year for the 49ers? I'm going to be real honest with you. I cannot remember the specifics on Yetur Gross Matos, but he was suggested in an article that he could be a cap casualty. He could be a camp casualty, etc. So 2023 was 4.5 sacks. Not sure what's going on there. I apologize for coming to you with those numbers without that prepared. But another name is Von Miller is still being whispered that he could be a cap casualty, and he is older, so these numbers 6'3", 246, 4'5", 340, 37-inch vertical, 21 reps on the bench press are not numbers that are necessarily the most accurate right now. His play has diminished from when he was a superstar in the NFL, but the whispers are the Bills are still tight on cap space. I believe that number, I looked into it, is $1.9 million-ish right now, so right around the $2 million mark. Cutting Von Miller would save them money, and so like we saw with the Chiefs last season, you want to go into the season with a little bit of room because you don't know what's going to happen injury-wise in the contact sport that is football. So if they cut him, I think that the Chiefs might be a potential landing spot for him because he does reportedly wear 58 in honor of Derek Thomas. So this might be, Kansas City might be a place that he would hope to play at least at some point during his career. He has had a long and storied career at this point, and maybe wanting to finish it up with a hopeful Super Bowl run in Kansas City. Then we get into a couple of lesser-known names, but guys that are interesting because they would not be a whole lot of money for the Kansas City Chiefs to go out and sign. Most of these guys, or the last two, say most of these guys, the last two names on this roster, or on this list, are there because it is whispered around their teams, Michael Clemens with the Jets, that they might be moving on from him just from a talent standpoint, the players that they've brought in, etc. He might not be on the team this coming season. Clemens is 6'5" and 1/4 inch tall, 263 pounds with 34 and 7/8 arms, basically 35-inch arms, a 10-inch hand. He ran a 4.85 40-yard dash with a 35-inch vertical, 24 reps on the bench press with those 35-inch arms. Now, he's not someone who has contributed a whole lot at the NFL level, and he would likely be a role player, not a starter. He's not a threat to come in and start. But you are looking at a guy who could come in and provide reps for the Kansas City Chiefs. This obviously is not the most game-breaking signing the Chiefs could make, but it is one that would bring up the floor for this defensive line group and the edge position, possibly some versatility with inside-outside stuff as well. Someone who would bounce around that bottom part of the 53-man, depending on how many edge players the Chiefs decide to take into the season. And look, he's got physical tools. 6'6", 260, 35-inch arms. Maybe he's just not in the right place with the Jets. And the Jets have a pretty good defense, so if you're not maybe cutting it with the Jets, it's possible you still are an NFL player. Then we have Mike Morris of the Seahawks. A lot of whispers that Mike Morris will be cut. This is an interesting name to me because of the physicals here. 6'5" and 1/8, 275 pounds, 33-inch arms, 10-inch hands, 4.95 40-yard dash, so not a speed rusher. 28.5-inch vertical, 9'2" broad jump, and 22 reps on the bench press. This would be a D-line versatility guy. He can come in and he can take reps at the defensive tackle position, can take reps at the defensive end position for you, and would help that rotation all across the line like we talked about earlier. Someone that would possibly be able to help both Chris Jones and George Karlaftis get a few reps off per game. And I think that is something the Chiefs, okay, just to round out what I have on the screen there, he was a 5th-round pick 3 years ago. So he is fairly young. He was fairly highly thought of coming out of college. The Chiefs are hoping to get back to an explosive offense. Why does that matter if you're going to sign a player like Mike Morris? What am I talking about? Why do I bring that up? Well, if you're going to get back to having an explosive offense, and I think they're shaping up to have a top 10-ish defense once again. If you have 5,000-yard, 50-touchdown Mahomes paired with a top 10 defense, you're going to win a few games by quite a few points. And this seems like la-ti-da type analysis here, but if you are winning quite a few games, and some of those games happen by 3-score margins, 10 points, 12 points, what you're going to have to do is find a way to get the players off the field to save them for the next week. You have the opportunity with a 21-point lead to take your starters out. If you don't have the versatility along your backups to play whatever position they're needed at whichever position they're needed, then it doesn't do any good to get those point differentials, because you can't get your starters off the field. We've seen this several times in the Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes era during that last week of the regular season, where a couple years ago, it was a completely meaningless game, and you still had quite a few of your offensive linemen on the field because you didn't have anybody behind them. You didn't have anybody behind them that could be trusted on the field. And again, that is something you don't like to project. It makes you very nervous before training camp even happens to project things like that. But not being ready for it means you're not ready for it. And week 18 comes around and you still have to trot Chris Jones out there to play defensive tackle. He's one snap away from rolling an ankle, etc. So guys like this are perhaps more valuable to teams like the Kansas City Chiefs than to teams like the Seahawks, who might, sort of be on the bubble for the playoffs, teams like that. So anyway, guys, that is what I have for the edge position and players that the Chiefs might be able to bring in at the edge position at this point. If you like or appreciate this sort of thing, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. And if you find yourself here by chance but not design, the Chiefs are the only thing I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week. We are over 2 years of consecutive daily uploads, and as always, I hope to have you back for the next one.